Go ahead.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Okay, so for the types of power I chose it said as a leader or follower. I am going to go under the umbrella of leader because um, I am a server and I have to utilize expert power. I need to be an expert in the food, the ingredients. Um, if people ask me questions about the menu, what does this, particular meal, what do they use? What are the ingredients? Do you guys have things for vegan people? And so being there a year and a half almost, I have to know some vegan options, for instance. There's, I mean, the menu is like 40 or 50 items. So it's taken me, when I first started, it was rough, but now I'm pretty proficient in what's in the meals. And then also, um, I used expert power when I was a massage therapist years ago. I had to know the muscles, tendons, where the referring pain was going to, like muscles, where things connected, because everything connects in the body. Um, I guess I was going to say information power also that can tie into expert power sort of. When I was in massage, I'm sorry, when I worked at the chiropractic office, I would have to do events. So knowing when we go to these marketing events, knowing what type of insurance knowing what type of insurance people could use, what type of treatments we use for certain injuries, things like that. And so the next question was had to do with culture and how it influenced leaders or followers. Um, for that, sorry, give me just one moment here. I'm looking at my notes. The book really talked about cultural intelligence. It talked about cultural synergy, but I like the cultural intelligence aspect. Where I grew up too, it was very like went to school with like different ethnicities, nationalities, but I don't think I really started delving into like uh, or learning about different cultures. It talks about high context, low context, high power distance. And so the book gave a lot of examples. They used one about a German boss talking to his Japanese counterpart. But I think it's good to know how different cultures, how do we say this, how different cultures interact, what's appropriate to say to somebody of a different culture. We're a low context culture, so we just say things, we say it, we mean it. Sometimes it can be interpreted as being very rude, very to the point, and other cultures they're not they don't respond well to that. So I think it's good to know how different cultures operate and communicate non-verbally as well, so that we don't go into a meeting and say something offensive to somebody. So
For
with
sure.
that, yeah.
As you were talking about expert power at a restaurant, I was kind of thinking about how it's super common in like the culture in the United States to go into a restaurant and expect your server to like make accommodations for you, know exactly what's on the vegan items, like all of those things, and like you expect your server to be an expert. Whereas I feel like I've been to other countries, like in Italy, it's kind of like this is the menu, you get what you get, figure it out. This is what we're serving. So I think that that's kind of interesting play on both like the expert knowledge that we expect from in our country versus like other countries. Um, I kind of touched on the idea of expert power in a way that like it shifts power of what's normally normal. So like I grew up, obviously most people grow up their parents having expert power over them or different kinds of power over them. And you're more of a follower to your parents. And then now with this new generation of technology, kids are becoming the expert in power, the expert power with technology with their parents, because they know more about the technology and they're the ones teaching their parents the information. last week I had to convince my dad not to get an Instagram account because he just wouldn't utilize it and know what was going on. I would be dealing with it on a regular basis. So that's something that's kind of, I think, shifted over our generations. As far as culturally, I grew up in the United States with the concept of knowledge is power, and really have utilized that to advance my career, and obviously go to school so that I have more knowledge. However, there's a lot of other countries that even if you do have the knowledge, it doesn't mean that you have power. It's more so like you're born into the power or something like that. So that difference in our culture versus other cultures.
Going off of what you said about the cultures and like the knowledge and stuff, I feel like that's really important for, like, for example, for different leadership styles. Like for Middle Eastern cultures, it's very much of someone says something and that's it. Like there's no going above, going below, going, like there's no wavering from what they say. It's their way or no way. So I feel like that is really prevalent in so many cultures now that we don't even really realize. Like if you think about it, like Saudi Arabia, like they just allowed women to drive. What year is it? Like what? Doesn't make sense. But
when was this?
What?
Like this year, last year?
I think it was this past year. I think it was 2018, 2017, where they just now allowed women to drive. Yeah, it's crazy. But it just goes to show how different. Because if that happened in America, it would not fly. Let's be real. But it just shows the cultural differences of what's allowed there and what's not here, and how drastic some situations can be. And I even feel like that goes with like leadership. Like for example, the one that I saw was relevant to me was the reward power, because it's very, where I work at Starbucks, it's very reward based, where if you do good and you like try your hardest and you're like always on top of everything, every couple of weeks everyone votes, and whoever gets the most votes as like the hardest worker gets a $80 bonus to their paycheck. And then there's all these customer interactions where all the customers come in and they give their like favorite baristas like gifts. Like for last Christmas, the customer who was like my favorite customer came in and gave me an envelope with $150 in it for a Christmas gift, just for being nice. And we have like customers who come in and like cook us meals just from like just for fun, just because they like us and all this stuff. And it's very rewarding to be in a place of reward power, because you feel like you're not expendable. Like they want you there, and like in a situation where the place is the turnover rate is so high, it's good to be like noticed and like actually like appreciated for your work, and not just, oh, it's another person that's just taking my money and giving me my coffee. Like it makes you feel.
School, when they pay for school, is that like after a certain amount of time of being there, or is that right away?
It's after, I believe, 3 months they let you do that, and then that's another reward.
So that's part of that, like
rewarded with incentives to like take education.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's why I see so many people talk about Starbucks. Like, when did they start that program for you guys?
A couple years ago, I think.
Oh, okay, that's why I see.
Yeah. It's a really, really good reward for working there. Fully reimburse you for everything. So
nice.
Yeah, I used to think it was a really small scholarship. Is it full or it's most?
The full ride, yeah.
Yeah, the full ride. That blows my mind. I really.
Brendan's gonna come work at Starbucks.
Yeah. I was a server. I took the same route as Christina, and I thought I took the smart route. I was like, everyone should go be a server out of college. The move, but yeah.
It's not that great.
No, it's nice getting tips, though.
Yeah.
If they tip you well.
Yeah. That's very true.
You know what I'm talking about.
It's true. So I'll go off of that and go into mine, which I've seen a lot of referring power in my time, and there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons to this. The pros is that when you have the right leader, that everyone typically is on board. Well, hopefully, if everyone is pretty close with that leader or believes in that leader. And the negative is that leader needs to be, he needs to be knowledgeable, He needs to have skills. He can't just be BSing everyone, or he just can't have a great personality. Eventually, everyone's going to want to know that this dude can do the job. And so there's a few examples of this. And one of the examples that I have is I wanted to use the Tom Brady example, which is people have high expectations. So people expect to perform well, and they typically do. And if eventually, people, I'm sure, because with all these, just Tom Brady's always talked about. So I'm sure when people go to New England, I'm sure they're really like, is this guy really going to do all this? Is he that great? I'm sure they're not expecting him to be perfect. I'm assuming they actually look for the negatives before they look for the positives. I think that the positives are always on TV. So that, I think that the fact that he can back that up when people do go there and they're like, man, he does have the work ethic. He does have the intangibles that people don't always see. I think that goes a long way in being a good leader. And you kind of see it all the time. I remember that's how I used to, because I used to take a leadership position in my fraternity. And I used to do the same thing. I used to grab the people that everyone kind of looked up to, the one that everyone liked, the one that kind of just had a way of swaying a crowd. I'll grab those people and try to get them to be like, hey, this is what we should do. This is what we should do. Just because I knew they would influence the rest of the people. And I feel like that's kind of been one of the oldest kind of known ways of being a leader throughout time. I really feel like that's kind of how people used to, for thousands of years, I really feel like they ran little civilizations, purely off of the best leaders, the people that kind of could sway the crowd. So
they.
Mm-hmm. Is there any, I also talked a little bit about how I think coercive power is one of the powers that like I've never really wanted to use or used, but I've like experienced it, and it's always been like a negative experience. I don't know if anyone feels like there's a power that like they want nothing to do with.
Oh yeah. So the power I would want nothing to do with. That one's kind of tough. So mine would probably be
Is this the one?
Power.
Is this the one where least we don't want to use? Is that?
Yeah, I was just thinking we could kind of.
Kind of just talking here. Yeah, no, cohesive power would definitely be the one that I would dislike. But yeah, kind of going back to the referent power too, is just the negatives in it. I don't think I see as many negatives for the other ones as this one. So I was looking at this, and it's like it can diminish if it's overused. That's another thing. If you're always kind of grabbing that one leader to do everything, people are gonna be like, hey, well, what about me? What about this? Or what about the team? The direction can kind of go in the wrong way. And so that's a big negative in my part that I can see easily happening anywhere. And,
I kind of think how you were talking about if they are just like a lot of talk and they like get people like them because they're like sociable, but if they don't like ever follow through on it, that's when like that power can kind of just go right out the window. It's hard to keep those followers when you don't actually follow through.
Exactly. So you can't be all talk. You got to lead by example. And going back to, you just need to be knowledgeable, and you got to put that work in.
Yeah. Are we all good?
Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop the broadcast. Okay.
Sweet.
Cool.